Arrogant rookie officer challenges a black judge's authority. What happens next? Stuns everyone. There are moments in life when arrogance meets unshakable authority, and the collision sparks a blaze of drama no one can forget. In this riveting tale, a newly minted but overconfident police officer dares to challenge the power and integrity of a respected black female judge. What starts as a simple courtroom procedure quickly escalates into a thrilling test of wills, hidden agendas, and shocking revelations. Power is tested, trust is broken, and loyalties are pushed to the brink. Just when you think you know how it will end, an unexpected twist changes everything. Prepare yourself for an unforgettable story of pride, justice, and the stunning consequences of crossing the line. Los Angeles can be a land of dreams or a land of nightmares, depending on who you ask. The city buzzes with life at all hours, traffic weaving through palm-lined streets, while celebrities stroll casually alongside everyday citizens. Against this vibrant backdrop stands the Clara Shortridge Foltz Criminal Justice Center, a real and towering grey fortress in downtown Los Angeles, where justice is dispensed daily to an endless stream of defendants, plaintiffs, and lawyers. Judges arrive early, and on this particular morning, so does Officer Derek Mason, a rookie in the Los Angeles Police Department whose confidence borders on unchecked arrogance. Mason is tall, muscular, and crisp in his brand-new LAPD uniform. A smug grin crawls across his face as he navigates the bustling courthouse corridors. At 27 years old, he's fresh out of the academy, but he carries himself as though he's been policing the streets for decades. A certain swagger accompanies his every step, turning heads of fellow officers and civilians alike. He passes by colleagues who return his nods with politeness, but behind his back, some roll their eyes. They've already heard about his brash attitude during training. Mason believes he can handle any situation because, in his mind, the badge grants him instant authority over everyone, including the judges. Upstairs, in a modest but well-organized office, Judge Ebony Cole prepares for a day of hearings. Cole is a striking figure, not just because of her stately black robe, but due to the quiet confidence she exudes. She's in her early 40s, wearing her natural hair in a professional updo. Her penetrating gaze could silence a rowdy crowd, though she's known for her fairness and measured temperament. Having graduated from Harvard Law School, Cole dedicated the last 15 years to serving the public, from the district attorney's office to an appointment on the bench. For her, the mission is always to uphold the law with integrity, to hear every voice in her courtroom, and to make decisions in the best interest of justice. It's not uncommon for new police officers to testify in her courtroom, but each one learns quickly that they must exhibit respect and know their place, whether they're wearing a badge or not. Cole believes in equality under the law, and she won't tolerate disrespectful behavior, especially from someone who should uphold the law. This morning, a fairly routine hearing is on the docket, involving a small-time incident of vandalism. Officer Mason is there to provide witness testimony against the defendant, who was caught spray-painting a mural in broad daylight. Mason is ready to shine, or so he thinks. He's prepared, or at least he believes he is, to walk in, give a statement, and leave with a sense of victory. But fate has other plans. It's in this intersection of a proud new officer and a seasoned, principled judge that the seeds of conflict are sown. And it won't be long before arrogance collides head-on with the unyielding force of justice, setting off a chain of events that will shake both the courthouse and Mason's future to its core. The hearing room is a classic example of what one might find in any high-traffic courtroom: wooden benches, fluorescent lights, and a small gallery area for onlookers. The morning crowd consists of a few family members of defendants, lawyers scrolling through their phones, and law students observing proceedings for experience. The defendant in question, a teenage boy named Luis Martinez, stands nervously next to his overburdened public defender. He glances around, avoiding eye contact with the uniformed officer he remembers from that afternoon on the street. Officer Derek Mason steps forward when called, shoulders back, chin high, ready to deliver his testimony. Judge Ebony Cole, seated on the bench, studies him with an attentive but neutral expression. She's seen this type before, rookies who either quake with nervousness or overflow with cockiness. There's rarely an in-between. Mason clearly belongs to the second category. He begins to recount the incident, how he spotted Luis Martinez spray-painting a commissioned mural in broad daylight, and how he approached the boy, identified himself, and proceeded to detain him. The story is straightforward enough, but the tone of Mason's words drips with condescension. It's as if he's lecturing the court on how thankful they should be that he's out there protecting society from hooligans with paint cans. In truth, there is nothing exceptional about this routine arrest, except for Mason's inflated sense of self-importance. Judge Cole interrupts once to clarify a time detail. Mason responds with a dismissive, "As I stated already," which raises an eyebrow from the bench. A hush settles across the room, tension coursing through the air like an electric current. Even the public defender lifts her gaze from her notes, silently noting the edge in Mason's tone, but the judge remains poised. She politely asks Mason to restate the time of the incident for the record. He obliges, but not without a barely concealed sigh of impatience. At that moment, Ebony Cole fixes her cool gaze on him, letting the silence linger. Everyone in the courtroom feels the temperature drop a few degrees. The judge speaks with controlled authority, reminding Mason in calm, measured words that all testimony must be clear for the court record and for the sake of justice. Yet Mason's arrogance doesn't wane. When it's time for cross-examination by the public defender, the officer's responses are peppered with sarcasm and dismissive tones. He interrupts the attorney more than once, prompting the judge to interject again. The public defender, though fairly junior, remains respectful, sticking to her questions about the approach, the reading of Miranda rights, and other standard procedure details. As the hearing concludes, Judge Cole sternly instructs both sides that any further issues or evidence should be submitted before the next session. She thanks Officer Mason for his time, but her gaze lingers, unreadable. Mason leaves the stand with a sense of triumph, interpreting the judge's neutrality as submission. Little does he know, Judge Ebony Cole is far from impressed by his theatrics. Underestimating her authority will be his first major mistake. After court is adjourned for the morning session, Judge Cole returns to her chambers. Though she maintains an unruffled exterior in the courtroom, in private she allows a moment to exhale, removing her reading glasses to pinch the bridge of her nose. It's not the first time she's encountered arrogance from a new officer, but something about Mason's smug demeanor sets her on edge. She has a sixth sense when it comes to reading people, honed from years spent prosecuting cases of corruption and misconduct. She doesn't jump to conclusions, but she makes a mental note to keep an eye on Mason's future courtroom appearances. In the calm of her chambers, Ebony Cole's thoughts drift to the path that brought her here. Growing up in a working-class neighborhood of South Los Angeles, she witnessed firsthand the tense relationship between the community and law enforcement. She vividly remembers the day she saw officers berate her father for standing on the wrong side of the block, assuming he was a loiterer. The humiliation on his face stuck with her. Those experiences fueled her resolve to stand on the side of justice, which for her meant not only enforcing the law, but also reforming it from within. She pushed herself academically, earned scholarships, and eventually graduated from Harvard Law School near the top of her class. Driven by a desire to serve, she joined the district attorney's office, prosecuting cases ranging from petty theft to major felonies. Over time, her reputation for fairness and rigorous legal knowledge led to an appointment as a superior court judge. This position granted her the platform to create real change, but also placed a target on her back among those who disliked strong women of color in positions of power. Outside of work, Ebony Cole faces challenges many professionals do. She's divorced, having ended an unfulfilling marriage a few years back. She is the mother of a 12-year-old daughter named Nia, who is the light of her life. Balancing the demands of single motherhood with the grueling workload of a judge is no small feat. On top of that, Ebony supports her aging mother, who has been dealing with health issues. Each day is a testament to Ebony's resilience, yet also a reminder of the pressure she bears. Still, Ebony Cole knows that composure is her greatest ally on the bench. She can't afford to show frustration or anger, especially not when a fresh-faced officer tries to undermine her. She's not naive to how quickly rumors circulate. A black woman in a robe, being overly sensitive or too emotional when dealing with officers. She's determined not to give her critics any fodder. She must remain professional, unwavering, and fair. That's why Officer Mason's attitude troubles her. She senses something unsettling behind that arrogance, perhaps a reckless ambition or even a disregard for procedure. Experience has taught her that small cracks in the legal wall can grow into fissures if left unchecked. And so she decides she won't ignore Mason. She'll watch, she'll wait, and she'll be ready for whatever comes next. The Clara Shortridge Foltz Courthouse is bustling when Mason returns a few weeks later, brimming with self-assurance for another hearing. This time the stakes are slightly higher. The case involves an alleged assault on an officer, with Mason as the chief complainant. The defendant claims self-defense, insisting that Mason used excessive force during the arrest. Tension fills the packed courtroom because supporters of the defendant have shown up, including community activists who believe police brutality has gone unchecked for too long. From the bench, Judge Ebony Cole presides, maintaining her usual air of calm. As the session begins, the defendant's attorney launches a series of questions aimed at unraveling Mason's account of the arrest. Mason's answers start confidently, but soon his composure slips. The lawyer points out inconsistencies in Mason's written incident report. The timeline doesn't match up with security camera footage, and the severity of the defendant's injuries suggests more than a simple arrest scuffle. When confronted with these discrepancies, Mason bristles. Instead of calmly clarifying, he becomes defensive. He raises his voice and cuts the attorney off mid-question. Judge Cole interjects, urging Mason to wait his turn. But the officer's frustration is visible. He doesn't like being challenged, especially not in a room that includes reporters and activists who are quick to criticize law enforcement. As the defense continues, Mason's tone becomes more combative. He refers to the defendant as a criminal, rather than using neutral language like the accused. He dismisses the attorney's inquiries as irrelevant, and at one point he even challenges the judge's ruling to sustain the defense's objection. A collective gasp ripples through the courtroom when Mason, in a fit of impatience, mutters under his breath that the judge is coddling criminals. Judge Cole's eyes narrow. Though she remains poised, the tension emanating from her is palpable. She calmly but firmly requests the court stenographer to read back Mason's last statement. The text confirms that he indeed insinuated the judge was showing undue leniency. A hush falls. Everyone waits for the judge's reaction. They see a flicker of something in her expression. Anger, perhaps, tempered by professionalism. In a measured tone, Judge Cole addresses Mason directly. "Officer Mason, this court will not tolerate disrespect toward the bench or any party in these proceedings. We aim to maintain a fair and respectful environment at all times. If you continue to ignore this court's directives and rules of decorum, I will have no choice but to hold you in contempt." Mason stands rigid, jaw clenched. It's the first time his bravado falters, if only slightly. He casts a sideways glance at the gallery, where his fellow officers and superiors might be watching. He forces a curt nod, but offers no apology. His silence, tinged with defiance, speaks volumes. The hearing continues with increased scrutiny on Mason's testimony. Judge Cole's demeanor, though unyielding, is nothing but professional. Still, beneath her calm exterior, a storm is brewing, and everyone in that courtroom can sense the thunder on the horizon. After that heated session, rumors circulate within courthouse hallways. Some say Mason stormed off, muttering curses about soft judges who care more about criminals than cops. Others speculate that he might be on a personal mission to prove himself at any cost. By the time the news reaches Ebony Cole's ears, it's gained layers of exaggeration. She tries to focus on her next cases, yet a nagging worry tugs at her. Officers like Mason can undermine community trust, and if left unchecked, can breed injustice from within the system. Meanwhile, Mason's frustration boils over in private. In his small shared office at the precinct, he fires off an email to a local journalist he knows slightly. He offers what he calls an exclusive scoop on how certain judges, especially one activist judge, are letting criminals off the hook. He frames it as a matter of public safety, suggesting that some judges care more about their social agenda than the victims. He has no concrete evidence, only a distorted perspective, yet he's confident that with enough spin he can paint Judge Cole as a soft-on-crime outlier. Before sending the email, a flicker of doubt crosses Mason's mind. He wonders if this is the right move. Will it backfire? However, his arrogance squashes that momentary hesitation. He hits send, believing that once the public hears his version, they'll rally behind him. He imagines headlines praising him as a whistleblower. The local journalist, intrigued by a sensational story, replies promptly, requesting a phone interview. Mason is elated. He sneaks out of roll call early to take the call in his car, detailing his grievances against the judge. He overstates his credibility, brandishing his role as an officer, despite only having a few months of actual field experience, as proof that he knows the system inside and out. The journalist, sensing a potential front-page story, promises to look into it and possibly publish something in the coming weeks. Back in her chambers, Judge Cole notices an unusual influx of phone calls and messages from media outlets. She instructs her clerk to screen them, uninterested in fueling a media circus. Her years of experience have taught her that reacting too quickly to media accusations only fans the flames. But when she learns that Mason has been speaking out publicly, she's both disappointed and concerned. It's rare for an officer to openly criticize a judge, especially while ongoing proceedings exist where that very officer is a witness. Still, Ebony remains unflappable on the surface. She adheres to her guiding principle: let facts speak louder than speculation. If the media wants sensational drama, she won't give it to them. If Mason thinks he can sway public opinion with baseless claims, then let him try. Eventually, the truth will prevail. In private, however, she composes a letter to the chief judge, informing him of the situation. It's not an attempt to silence Mason, but rather to maintain transparency. She outlines recent incidents, noting Mason's disrespect in the courtroom and his ongoing attempts to undermine the judicial process in the public sphere. She's too seasoned to let fear or anger cloud her judgment, but the letter stands as a clear signal that she won't back down if Mason's behavior escalates into outright contempt. That evening, Ebony Cole tries to leave her frustrations behind as she returns home to her modest suburban house. She's greeted by the savory aroma of dinner cooking. Her mother, Ruth, has prepared Nia's favorite dish, chicken stir-fry. Usually, the warmth of family life is enough to soothe Ebony's courtroom stress, but tonight her mind spins with thoughts of Mason's brazen defiance. At the dinner table, Nia chatters excitedly about her upcoming school science fair project, while Ruth gently chides Ebony for looking distracted. Ebony forces a smile, wanting to be fully present for her daughter. She manages to set aside the stress for a moment, promising to help Nia with her project over the weekend. But after dinner, once Nia is in her room doing homework, Ebony confides in her mother about the day's events. Ruth listens intently, sipping her tea. She reminds Ebony that she's faced intimidation before, both as a prosecutor and as a judge, and that she's always come out stronger. Ebony appreciates the support, but admits something about Mason's relentless self-righteousness unsettles her. He's not merely disrespectful, he's manipulative, and that combination can be dangerous. Ruth advises patience. He'll trip himself up eventually, she says. Ebony nods, hoping her mother is right. Meanwhile, Derek Mason isn't having a peaceful evening either. Across town, in his small bachelor apartment, he re-watches his interview with the journalist, which is posted online as a teaser clip. He feels a surge of triumph as the reporter describes him as a brave whistleblower within the LAPD, who claims a local judge is coddling criminals. Mason reads through the comment section, receiving a mix of praise from police hardliners and condemnation from others who accuse him of fear-mongering. He shrugs off the negative comments, focusing on the praise. In his mind, he's shaping a public narrative where he's the hero, exposing a flawed justice system. However, Mason's phone buzzes, a text from a colleague who warns him to be careful. The rumor mill at the precinct suggests command staff are unhappy about an officer publicly criticizing a sitting judge. It could lead to departmental scrutiny or even an internal affairs investigation for insubordination. Mason downplays it, convinced the public outcry against Judge Cole will overshadow any departmental blowback. Still, a kernel of doubt lodges in his chest, tightening his grip on the phone. He tries to ignore it. Back at the courthouse the next day, lawyers and court staff whisper about the story swirling around. Judge Cole appears as composed as ever, focusing on her docket and refusing to be baited by sensationalism. She can't show any sign of intimidation or personal bias. Justice must be served impartially, no matter the external noise. Yet beneath her calm exterior, she braces for the next wave of conflict. She knows that Mason's disrespect, combined with his newfound media platform, might embolden him further. Tensions continue to mount on both sides. The stage is set for a dramatic showdown, one that neither Mason nor Cole can fully anticipate. Each day, the courthouse corridors hum with speculation. Will Mason go too far? Will Cole be forced to lay down the law more firmly? The undercurrent of unease grows stronger, like an approaching storm just beyond the horizon. As the media buzz around Mason's accusations continues, Judge Cole's personal life demands her attention in ways that compound her stress. One morning before court, she receives a call from her mother's doctor. Ruth's blood pressure is dangerously high, and they need to adjust her medication. The timing couldn't be worse, with Ebony's docket packed and the swirling controversy threatening to overshadow her every move. Nonetheless, she calmly arranges for a caregiver to check on her mother daily, trying to ensure no detail is overlooked. Later that evening, Ebony and Nia sit together in the living room. Nia practices lines for a school play she's starring in, while Ebony pretends to be a rapt audience. But her thoughts drift elsewhere, to the tension at work. She wonders if she'll have to recuse herself from cases involving Mason, or if that might send the wrong message, implying she can't remain impartial. It's a tricky balance, and the last thing she wants is for her daughter to sense the turmoil. At the same time, Ebony grapples with guilt. Is she dedicating enough time to Nia? Between her mother's health, the intense caseload, and Mason's attempts to undermine her, she feels stretched thin. She recalls how her own father worked multiple jobs and rarely had time to attend her school events. She vowed to be different for Nia. Yet reality keeps intruding. She checks the clock, notices the late hour, and gently sends Nia to bed, giving her a kiss on the forehead. Then Ebony heads to her home office to wade through legal briefs. But even work offers no respite tonight. A letter from the State Commission on Judicial Performance sits on top of the stack, requiring her official response to complaints lodged by a concerned citizen. Ebony doesn't have to guess who that concerned citizen is. The timeline aligns perfectly with Mason's public outcry. Though she's confident in her record and her fairness, responding to a formal inquiry still demands time, energy, and precision. The commission, after all, must investigate any claim, no matter how baseless. As Ebony meticulously drafts her response, she can't help but feel a pang of irritation. She's spent her career working tirelessly to uphold the law, only to be attacked by someone who's barely learned the fundamentals of policing. It's a stark reminder that power can be wielded by anyone with a platform, and sometimes truth is overshadowed by sensationalism. Still, Ebony won't let frustration devour her. She closes her laptop, taking a moment to center herself. She thinks about her journey, her responsibilities, and the promise she made to serve justice, come what may. Challenges have never deterred her before, and they won't now. She's more determined than ever to see this through, to stand firm against Mason's tactics. After all, she has far too much at stake: her reputation, her family's well-being, and, most importantly, the integrity of the justice system she's sworn to protect. While Judge Cole grapples with external and personal pressures, Derek Mason experiences the first tremors of the fallout from his media ventures. The LAPD's Internal Affairs Department has opened a preliminary inquiry. Though he's not yet under formal investigation, the department wants to review the circumstances surrounding his public statements, as well as the discrepancy in his courtroom testimony during the assault case. Captain Raquel Sanders, a veteran officer known for her strict adherence to protocol, calls Mason into her office for a talk. Mason arrives with a forced bravado, but his bravado falters when Captain Sanders gives him a stern once-over. She's heard complaints from fellow officers who feel Mason's actions undermine their collective credibility. Moreover, department higher-ups worry he's fueling tensions between police and the courts. Calmly, Sanders asks Mason to explain himself. He tries to spin it as him protecting law and order, but Sanders sees through the gloss. She warns him that stepping out of line has consequences, not just for him, but for the entire department's relationship with the judiciary and the community. If he continues, formal disciplinary measures could follow. His pride wounded, Mason leaves the meeting resentful. He'd expected a pat on the back for taking the fight to the judge, not a rebuke. He wanders into the precinct locker room, where another officer, a more seasoned cop named Eduardo Reyes, corners him privately. Reyes tells Mason about the real challenges in policing, building community trust, ensuring that arrests stick by following proper procedure, and keeping personal vendettas out of the job. Mason waves him off, convinced he's not the one at fault. Yet seeds of doubt are sown. As the media hype surrounding his whistleblower claims dulls, people move on to the next sensational story. Mason realizes he might be left alone to face the repercussions. His phone interview, which once seemed like a masterstroke, now appears as a potential career misstep. And the lack of further coverage only highlights that the journalist probably found no substantial evidence to bolster Mason's claims. Meanwhile, Mason's personal life suffers. His girlfriend of a few months, Tessa, has grown tired of his obsession with the case and the judge. During dinner at a local diner, she confronts him. "You're always talking about how the system's against you. Don't you see how obsessed you are? You can't let this go. It's like you have a vendetta against a judge who's just doing her job." Mason becomes defensive, accusing Tessa of not understanding the pressure of being a cop. The argument escalates until Tessa storms out, leaving Mason alone with a half-eaten plate of fries and a realization that he might be spiraling out of control. Returning to his apartment, Mason scrolls through the online chatter. No new articles or interviews mention him. The public attention he once craved is fading. All that remains is the cautionary voice of Captain Sanders and the annoyed gazes of his colleagues. He can't help but feel cornered. Yet instead of backing down or humbly reassessing his approach, he grows more determined. He decides there's only one way forward, to prove that he's right, that Judge Cole is biased and unfit, and for that he'll need a bigger, more shocking move. A few days later, a major case lands on Judge Cole's docket, one that draws attention citywide. It involves allegations of organized crime, with defendants accused of smuggling firearms. It's the kind of high-profile trial that can make or break careers, and Ebony Cole is assigned to preside. The courthouse buzzes with media interest, overshadowing any lingering focus on Mason's allegations. Journalists are more concerned with the mob connections of the defendants and the potential for a sensational trial. Little does anyone know, Derek Mason has a tangential link to this case. During a routine traffic stop weeks prior, he'd detained and questioned an associate of one of the defendants. Though the associate was released, the paperwork Mason filed flagged him as suspicious. Now, Mason sees this as an opportunity. If he can insert himself into this major trial, maybe provide testimony about the associate's demeanor or gather new intel, he might reclaim the spotlight and prove his worth to the department. Hoping to leverage this, Mason contacts the lead prosecutor, offering any information he can recall from that traffic stop. The prosecutor, busy and stressed, thanks him politely and mentions they'll be in touch if needed. Mason waits for a call that doesn't come. Growing impatient, he decides to dig deeper on his own, stepping into dangerous territory. He pulls records he's not authorized to access, searching for any connection that could link Judge Cole to the defendants. His logic is twisted. If he can find a hint of impropriety, perhaps a friend of a friend or an old case, he might assert that Cole has a conflict of interest. In the midst of his surreptitious digging, Mason stumbles across a sealed juvenile case file from nearly 2 decades ago. The file is heavily redacted, but one name stands out. Ebony Cole, then an assistant district attorney, was involved in prosecuting a minor connected to a local gang. Mason doesn't have the full picture, but he's certain he's found something explosive. He conjures a narrative in his head. Ebony Cole has links to gang activity or took shortcuts in her past. Without context, all he has is speculation, yet Mason believes it's enough to cast doubt on her integrity. He smirks, printing out the fragments. He's convinced he's about to expose a scandal. Rushing to a payphone, a paranoid move to avoid tracing, he contacts the same journalist, breathless with excitement, claiming he has evidence of a hidden connection between Judge Cole and criminal gangs. The journalist is skeptical, but the hint of a scandal is too tempting to ignore. They agree to meet. What Mason doesn't realize is that sealed files are sealed for good reason, and accessing them without proper authorization is a serious offense. Nor does he realize that Ebony Cole's role in that old case was wholly above board. She prosecuted a minor who later turned state's witness to help dismantle a trafficking ring. Far from a scandal, it was one of the building blocks of Ebony's reputation for fairness and firmness. Mason's illusions of a big reveal are about to collide with the truth. The stage is set for a turning point, one that will not only backfire, but also threaten to topple everything Mason has worked for. As the high-profile organized crime case gets underway, the courtroom is packed. Reporters, concerned citizens, and a host of legal experts analyzing every moment. Security is tightened, with multiple officers posted at every exit. Under the glare of the cameras, Judge Cole looks composed and methodical. She gives her opening remarks, reminding the jury of their duty and cautioning spectators to maintain decorum. Meanwhile, Derek Mason lurks in the hallway, hoping to be called in for some last-minute testimony. He's clutching a manila folder that he believes contains incriminating information about Judge Cole's past. He imagines the dramatic scene. He'll reveal the contents to the press, or even to the court if they'll allow him. He sees himself as a hero unveiling a corrupt judge, but the reality will be much harsher. Inside the courtroom, the prosecution calls its first witness, an LAPD detective who outlines how the firearms were traced back to the defendants. The witness is thorough, and the defense attorney meticulously cross-examines every claim. Judge Cole maintains her impartiality, sustaining valid objections and overruling frivolous ones, her calm authority setting the courtroom's rhythm. At a recess, Mason makes his move. He corners the lead prosecutor, brandishing the manila folder and urging them to take a look at what he's found. The prosecutor raises an eyebrow, scanning the redacted documents and quickly recognizing them as sealed juvenile records. Alarmed, the prosecutor demands to know how Mason got them. Mason mumbles a non-answer, insisting that the public has a right to know. News of Mason's actions travels fast. Court officers whisper about how he's been seen messing with sealed files. The lead prosecutor, unwilling to let the fiasco derail the case, notifies the judge's clerk about Mason's suspicious activities. When the recess ends, Judge Cole resumes court, but before the next witness is called, the clerk hands her a note. The judge reads it, her face impassive yet serious. After a moment, she addresses the gallery. I've been informed of a potential breach of confidential records pertaining to past juvenile proceedings. Officer Derek Mason, if you are present, I order you to identify yourself and approach the bench. A hush falls. Mason stiffens, not expecting to be called out so directly. Slowly, he walks forward, folder in hand. Judge Cole's gaze is unyielding as she speaks. Officer Mason, I understand you may have come into possession of sealed juvenile records. Are you aware that accessing or distributing these records without proper authorization is a violation of state law? The entire courtroom is transfixed. Cameras pivot to capture Mason's reaction. He tries to stammer an explanation about the public's right to know, but Cole cuts him off with a measured sharpness. This is not your courtroom, officer, and you are not above the law. We will address this matter immediately. Tension crackles. Mason's mouth goes dry. He glances around, looking for support from fellow officers, but their expressions range from disbelief to embarrassment. The confrontation he yearned for has arrived, but it's taking a shape far more serious than he'd anticipated. With the jury temporarily excused, the courtroom transforms into a stage for the unfolding spectacle. Judge Cole requests that a bailiff collect the sealed documents from Mason. He clutches them protectively at first, but a stern look from the bailiff convinces him to relinquish them. The silence is deafening as Ebony Cole flips through the pages, quickly recognizing details from her old case. Her eyes flicker with indignation, but her voice remains calm and measured when she speaks. Officer Mason, these records pertain to a juvenile case from many years ago in which I served as a prosecutor, she states. They were sealed by court order to protect the minor involved. By bringing them here, you may have violated both ethical and legal boundaries. Do you have an attorney present or anyone to advise you? Mason's bravado drains from his face. He stammers that he only wanted to show the public who they were dealing with, implying some impropriety on the judge's part. But Ebony Cole counters swiftly, explaining that she prosecuted the minor in question and that the records reflect a legitimate case, lawfully handled. There's no conspiracy or hidden tie to organized crime. If anything, the documents only confirm her role in dismantling a gang network, ironically aligning with what Mason claims to support: public safety. The gavel strikes once, echoing in the tense air. Officer Mason, you have overstepped your authority by accessing sealed records without appropriate clearance. This court will be filing a formal complaint. Beyond that, your department may have grounds for an internal investigation. For now, I am ordering a brief recess to allow you the opportunity to retain legal counsel. The next steps will be determined accordingly. A swirl of murmurs spreads through the spectators, and cameras flash from the press area. Mason stands there, frozen. As the bailiff escorts him out, he catches snippets of hushed voices. What was he thinking? He's ruined his career. Reality sinks in. He's no longer the righteous whistleblower, but a cautionary tale of reckless ambition. In the hallway, the lead prosecutor waves him over, furious. You could have jeopardized a major case by pulling this stunt, the prosecutor hisses. Mason tries to stammer a defense, but his voice cracks under the weight of mounting shame. Soon, a representative from Internal Affairs arrives, requesting a private conversation. The air around Mason feels suffocating. Word spreads quickly. Officers who once tolerated Mason's arrogance now keep their distance. Rumors circulate about potential criminal charges, or at least severe disciplinary action. Mason's once blazing star dims rapidly as reality bombards him from all sides. His cunning plan to destroy Judge Cole's credibility has instead exposed his own. Even some who were previously sympathetic see him now as reckless, tarnishing the badge they all wear. The humiliation is profound. For the first time, Derek Mason realizes his entire career, and possibly his freedom, hang in the balance. The soft-on-crime judge narrative he tried to spin collapses under the weight of facts. In that moment he confronts a bitter truth. Sometimes the hardest blow isn't from external forces, but from one's own misguided hubris. In the weeks that follow, the fallout from the courtroom incident unfolds swiftly. Mason finds himself under formal internal investigation for unauthorized access to sealed court documents and potential misconduct in previous arrests. The local press, which once entertained his sensational claims, now devotes headlines to his rapid downfall. They publish timelines of his short career, highlight the contradictions in his statements, and underline his brazen disregard for judicial processes. At the precinct, Captain Raquel Sanders holds a grim face-to-face with Mason. She informs him that he is suspended without pay, pending the outcome of the investigation. "There's no place for rogue behavior in this department," she says quietly. "We're supposed to be guardians of the law, not vigilantes with badges." Mason tries to protest, but each argument rings hollow. His illusions of grandeur come crashing down around him. Meanwhile, Ebony Cole continues her work on the bench, handling daily cases with the same professionalism she's always shown. She receives updates about Mason's disciplinary proceedings, but she remains detached. She neither gloats nor rejoices. In her eyes, this is a tragic example of how one's unchecked ego can destroy both a career and public trust. As far as she's concerned, the system must function without bias, even when the culprit is an officer sworn to uphold the law. The final blow comes when the district attorney's office announces it's reviewing all cases in which Mason played a key role. Several are flagged for questionable conduct, particularly regarding the use of force and the accuracy of his reports. Defense attorneys line up to file motions, claiming their clients' convictions were tainted by Mason's potential dishonesty. The swirl of legal challenges intensifies, adding to the sense that Mason's entire career has been built on a shaky foundation. Desperate to salvage something, Mason attempts to issue a public apology, claiming he was misguided and that his passion for justice led him astray. But the public's trust is not so easily regained. Civil rights groups demand a thorough investigation, not a mere apology. The police union distances itself from Mason, unwilling to support an officer who has so blatantly violated protocol and tarnished the department's reputation. In the end, Mason's official termination comes as no surprise. Internal Affairs rules that his actions amounted to gross misconduct. The district attorney declines to press criminal charges only by the narrowest of margins due to lack of conclusive evidence of malicious intent. Yet Mason's reputation is irreparably shattered. His dream of rising through the ranks of the LAPD evaporates in a single press briefing. Weeks later, in a quiet, nearly empty courtroom, Ebony Cole formally concludes the matter. She notes for the record that Officer Mason's breach had no bearing on the high-profile case in question, ensuring the trial remains uncontaminated. Then, in a symbolic yet profound gesture, she reminds the court that justice is a delicate tapestry, easily frayed by arrogance and dishonesty. Her words resonate deeply with the few who remain in the gallery, some of whom witnessed Mason's earlier theatrics. Now they see the final chapter of his downfall, a downfall he orchestrated himself. And so ends the tumultuous saga of Officer Derek Mason, whose unbridled arrogance and disregard for proper procedure paved the way to his own demise. Judge Ebony Cole, unshaken by his personal vendetta, remains a testament to fairness and integrity, a powerful reminder that no one, not even an officer of the law, stands above the justice system. What began as a routine courtroom encounter spiraled into a confrontation fueled by pride, desperation, and twisted ambitions. Yet, in the end, truth prevailed. Mason's reckless pursuit of a fabricated scandal backfired, resulting in the very outcome he feared the most, the loss of his badge, his credibility, and his future in law enforcement. If you found this story compelling, consider showing your support by liking this video, sharing it with friends, and subscribing to our channel. Stay tuned for more gripping tales of twists, turns, and moral reckonings.